And I just remember talking to my family about living a year in Jamaica, and they were just blown away. Like,
I
where is
bet.
this
Yeah.
coming from? It's kind of strange enough you're doing this Franciscan thing, and now what is this? Never part of
What's
my life,
happened to our little boy?
right?
Right.
Education in Jamaica is free, but there's no public transportation to get you there. And so parents have to pay taxi fare for their child to get to school. My perception of Jamaica was marijuana. I mean, it's what it's known for, right, Ganja?
Yeah.
So, Tia, you have an inner monologue, right? Talking to yourself here or there.
Constantly. It won't shut up.
When you refer to yourself, do you use I, we, or you?
Oh, interesting. Okay.
It sounds like
So
a crazy person question,
it
but
does. It
it's
does.
interesting.
Okay. So I use, when I'm like frustrated, I go into the third person, like, ah, Tito, you idiot, that kind of a thing.
That's
Um,
second person, but that's
or
okay.
second person, sorry, yeah. But um, I think I probably go first person most of the time. I, this,
Really?
me. Yeah, I think so. I don't know. What about you?
I was wondering because I think that sounds like the normal thing to say
Okay.
because you don't want to have multiple personalities to talk to yourself. But I think I use we a lot.
Okay.
I particularly third person, like, all right, let's do this, let's do that.
Yeah.
Like that's a collective thing. But yeah, definitely when I'm angry, I want to dissociate from myself. It's you,
Right.
idiot. Yeah,
Yeah.
it's not me
Yeah.
who did it. It's you who did that.
I think I refer to myself in the royal we most often when I'm talking to my little sister. I'm not sure what that says about our relationship, but
Yeah, I think that says enough.
she asked me one time, "Who's we?" I was like, "Oh, the royal we."
Yeah. Don't you know
Oh
who
man.
I am?
Right? Exactly. Yeah. Oh
Well,
man.
speaking of we have a wonderful guest with us today, someone that we have known for quite a while,
Yep.
someone who is a bit of a rock star, living the life. I think what a lot of people imagine friars doing sometimes, but very few of us get to do, which is being a foreign missionary. We've talked a lot about people who have been past foreign missionaries, people who have wanted to do it, but this guy's doing it. And he's doing it in a place that we have both visited, where we both love, Jamaica. What could be
Yep.
cooler than Jamaica? Father Colin, welcome to the show, our great missionary.
Great. Thank you guys. It's wonderful to be with both of you.
It's awesome to have you.
So, Colin, tell us about Jamaica.
So Jamaica is a foreign mission that my legacy province of St. John the Baptist brought into our new province of Our Lady of Guadalupe. We have been in Jamaica since 2000, when we went down and have primarily been doing sacramental work. We had at 1.9 parishes, but we currently have four.
Yikes.
In this time, we've also had the opportunity to do social service. Jamaica is a developing country, in particular where we are in Western Jamaica. We are the social safety net, basically. The government tries hard and does all that it can do, I'm sure, but the reality is the needs are vast and immense. And I think particularly we as Franciscans, in the way we live, we really interact and engage people on a local level, allows us sometimes to see needs that even folks who live there don't always see or don't always appreciate. I think it says a great thing about us as Franciscans, of who we try to be, who Francis founded us to be. We currently have
Now,
four
I just have to
churches.
clarify, given our introduction here, when you say the
Yeah.
word we, you just
Right.
talking about yourself? Who's a part of this community?
So a part of this community currently is Father Jim Bach, Brother Tim Lamb, and myself are the solemnly professed friars. And then we have been, the three of us, we have been having the brothers walking together coming with us. So guys who just finished novitiate to get a experience of minoritas, I would call it, or maybe cross-cultural or an immersion experience, many different ways,
Yep.
come down for 9 months, 10 months to have that. And then they head off to seminary. So our hope is that this opportunity in Jamaica will allow them, as they're studying the theology, to also be deeply rooted in a context of lived experience of people who could be millionaires who we walk with, who could be the Jamaican middle class, teachers and principals, and a good number of folks who would be who's struggling day to day. But to see the way in which the gospel and the good news comes to all of God's people. So this upcoming year, we'll be having the two brothers who are making their solemn profession at finishing novitiate this year.
Very cool. So now I have a question. Are they going to get to have curried goat?
There will be curried goat.
I'm glad we've gotten to
I,
the hard hitting questions
Right.
already.
well, no, but this is the thing because when I visited, I went to go collect the goat.
Yes.
It was still alive when I got it,
Yep.
Oh
and
my gosh.
I rode in the bed of the truck with the goat.
Yep. That was for
Oh, poor guy.
that was for Harvest for one of Father Jim's churches, his
Yep.
fundraiser, and so they have curried goat, and one of the hotel owners donates a goat every year to it. We have to pick him up, and that's a hard meal to have the next that Sunday when you've picked him up and been looking at him in the rearview mirror.
It's fresh.
It's
Oh
fresh.
man, it was a
Well,
lot
now
of
it's
fun.
interesting because I want to go back to something you said. You said the millionaires, the middle class, and the poor. I don't often think of millionaires with Jamaica. So what does that mean?
So there are people, particularly where we are in Western Jamaica with Negril, hoteliers primarily, I would say, who are Jamaicans. You certainly have the all-inclusive resorts that would be, most of those are foreign owned, and like any large corporation, don't always have a great connection to the local population. But Negril really was an empty beach, beach town, fishing village until the 80s. And then it's been quite a bit of development since then. And I think, like probably most of the developing world, what we see, within Jamaica, there's a few people who have a lot of resources, much less who have kind of that middle class, and then the vast majority have, or like up where I'm pastor, most folks would be subsistence farmers. And so it's a matter of, or subsistence fishers going out fishing. And that would be the vast lived experience, economic reality for folks. But there is, like anywhere else, there is money. It's how do we help folks? And I think one of the things that we as Franciscans can do, because of how we are try to integrate within the local community, to help talk about the sense of the common good, and that there are ways in which we can help uplift people and help folks. And it takes everybody to do it. It's not just a church thing or a government thing or whatever thing. We are our brother and sister's keeper.
I think a lot of people, for those who have gone to Jamaica, they might have a sense of this, but I think a lot of people don't get the opportunity to go, and so they really don't know what to imagine when they think about Jamaica. And so, can you just give us like a framework of what is the religious kind of landscape there? Are people primarily Christian? Are there a lot of Catholics? What's it like? Just kind of for the people who maybe don't know.
The vast majority would self-identify as Christian. Until 1962, Jamaica was an English colony, and so Anglicanism was a very large and was the large and dominant religion. And if you wanted to move up within the
I wouldn't think
government,
that. That's funny.
yeah, well, but because when you come now, the Catholic Church, which was illegal for 100 years in Jamaica,
Oh,
until about World War II, there were only 3 or 4 priests on the entire island, but all out of Kingston. So we've had quite a bit of growth. The However, the Anglican Church is much smaller population-wise, probably under 2% now nationwide. And although they still own very large amounts of land and buildings and churches. We Catholics are about 2.2% of the population, most of which is in Kingston. Where we are in the West, probably about 1.6% of us are Catholic. And there can be a subtle or even overt anti-Catholicism. Part of this comes from the being illegal for 100 years. Seventh-day Adventists were the largest denomination on the island the only country in the world where the Adventists are a majority. I think if you were to look at behind their numbers a little bit, kind of you do altar calls, and the same family can make multiple altar calls and be counted multiple times. Um,
Okay.
Probably
Ah.
Pentecostalism has caught them, if not surpassed them. But we can easily become people's punching bags, and it's always, the Vatican is part of this new world order, or the Pope is this, or whatever it
Hmm.
may be.
Hmm.
So, part of what I just think is amazing about our rule is not so much particularly in Jamaica because it's not a Muslim country, but just the idea, Francis said, just go be a good neighbor. And, that's a way to evangelize. And I think that's one of the things we've seen out west is an example would be one of the schools I work at or help out at as a pastor. We had a Seventh Day Adventist as an acting principal for a few months. And when I got to the school, very respectful, always yes, sir, no, sir, okay, sir. Never any father, because you call no man father, as they would be told. And as a Catholic as well as an Adventist, you would not do it. Now, years later, it's always Fada. And whenever something's coming up, Father, this is going on, can you pray for my mom? Can you pray for me right now? And, it's taken 7-ish years that I've been there. But that just shows the ways in which I think Francis saw that you, by being a good neighbor, by just being a genuine person, you can really help to evangelize folks. Within Jamaica,
Yeah, and being a good neighbor means lots of things. Like you have a soup kitchen, you have a
yeah,
clinic, you have
right,
Right.
multiple churches. It seems whenever we're there, people know that the Catholics will help them.
right.
Whether they're going to go talk about us behind their back afterwards is a different story, but everyone seems to know the goodwill that we bring.
Yeah. And I think too, just to be there with being willing, and I see it maybe a little bit more when I've come back to the United States. We seem to be stratifying or segregating ourselves more and more. In other words, I'm in my house, I go to the store, I go back home. Or I go to work and I go back home. The community aspect is deteriorating. And I think that's one of the things, again, we as Franciscans, I mean, that's our charism, right? To live the gospel in community. And one of the things that we help to do is to bring that community wherever we go. Is the ideal, of course. Um,
It's interesting to me, you mentioned like all the different groups that have kind of gone through there, Anglican, Seventh Day Adventist, Pentecostal, and Catholics are trying to, have a presence there as well. Do you see an impact of like kind of the constant, almost revolving door of different sort of methods of evangelization or even proselytization?
Yeah. One of the things that has taken root in Jamaica as well is like the gospel of prosperity. And we're seeing people who are, as a pastor, speaking of some of the my brother and sister pastors. So, but it's a bit of a wolf in sheep's clothing, to be a
Mm,
little blunt, is I think praying on people who are desperate, who are in need, and, you give me money, God will give you money. And I think that's turned a lot of people against Christianity in general. And we tend to get lumped in together, that it's all Christians do this. Um, I think when people get to know who we are, they start to see another side of things, that we're not here just to take. And, Jamaica has a history of forced labor. I mean, that's the history of Jamaica since
Mm.
the 1400s, 1500s.
right.
Um, and so to see that we're here to be with you. If we can help, we try to. If we can't, we wish we could. But in it all, we're going to try to be witnesses to Jesus Christ and the great love that he has for you, and that love that he came even to be with us in humanity and the world.
Yeah, now I'm curious. So, one of the advantages of going to a place like Jamaica is that they speak English. So,
Yeah.
you don't have to have years of language study. Now, granted, as you were saying, father, there's a strong accent that takes a little while to get used to. But I'm wondering, besides language, what was the biggest culture shock going down there? Obviously, there's, you're talking about the different religions, you're talking about a different culture and different history. What was the first thing you're like, oh gosh, this ain't Ohio anymore?
Right? I didn't see the corn and the soybeans. To me, what's the best part of Jamaica is seeing the water. And that's one of my things is I
Mm.
never get tired. And whenever we have guests, when you guys come down, I always point out just how beautiful nature is there.
Yeah.
I'm not an ocean
Mm.
person. I grew up with brown water, ponds and rivers,
Yeah.
not my scene. But I love going more so to the cliffs and just seeing when you look out on the water and there's 3 to 4 different shades of blue in water that's just gorgeous, and to hear the waves hitting. Um, it to me is a very special time and place. Is it really for me to go back to nature to see the beauty, but also the power of nature, and which and to just kind of recenter myself. I think culturally, Jamaica is very different, and I think being willing to accept the differences took a while. I kind of came in saying, "Well, I'd like to see us do these things," which sound nice,
Mm.
and I'm sure they
Yeah.
all were great when I came there. But you have to learn. Okay, but how do we? If we're really going to be doing accompaniment and being a good neighbor, part of that is, yeah, there has to be a vision. Without vision, the people perish. But it also has to be journeying with people, and we all move at different speeds and different times. And so you can have the folks who are really gung ho, and how do you not let them get either burned out or jaded that not enough is happening fast enough. You kind of get your folks who are following behind, and as our movement or some of our particularly evangelizing like crusades and prayer in the town squares and home visits have gone on. We've seen people kind of rekindle their faith, either come back to the Catholic Church or become Catholic. But then you also get folks who are just through it all still a little lukewarm, and how do you try to help them too along the way? Uh, but I think being willing to listen and to really take that time to hear what people where they are in their journey with Jesus is uh, uh, and folks are willing to share, which is something else I didn't really grow up with. We all went to mass on Sunday. If it was a KFC donut breakfast afterwards, that was you grabbed your donut and you got in your car and you headed back home.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah. Well, maybe elephant in the room, because I know this was what was most shocking but unsurprising was the ganja. So you're on the beach and guys will just walk up, hey, you want some ganja? You want to smoke? It's just everywhere, and
yeah.
it's kind of culturally accepted. It's just kind of normal. Did you just not bat an eye? Did it shock you? It's so normal now.
I think it was so. I mean, certainly my perception of Jamaica was marijuana. I mean, it's what it's known for, right? Ganja.
Yeah.
Yeah,
I,
exactly.
it didn't really. I don't do any of that, so it just is one of those like people coming up and just being like, do you want to go run a marathon? Like, no, I'm not. I mean, there's not a piece of me that wants to go do that. And so, but it certainly is there, and it is one of those where if you, it is legal now, decriminalized, and I think one of the things that I'm seeing in the West, where we are at, and particularly part of the area where I'm pastor, is with the at least legalization or decriminalization of ganja throughout the United States and Canada, is more and more ganja tourism comes in, where people will
Mm.
take tourists out to the ganja plantations and exporting it. It's
Wow.
becoming more regulated within it.
I mean, it was part of the like Rasta faith, right? It's like part of like that whole expression. Um, I do remember when I came to visit, what was her name? The secretary,
Tahira.
uh, Tahira. I remember I showed up one day, hair braided, and she goes, "In a month, you'd be a Rasta here." And I was like, "I would not. Trust me, I would not."
It definitely is, and it's you try to learn about where you are, and really ganja in many ways is the Rasta Christology, or maybe would be the term we
Right.
would use. That like Jesus, ganja has been rejected by the world. Like Jesus, people destroy killed Jesus to try to destroy him. They destroy the ganja fields. But like Jesus, who rose again, ganja is still around everywhere. And it literally is. You will see where somebody smokes a joint or whatever and just flicks it out. And if there's a seed in that joint, you will see a ganja tree start to come up just on the side of the road.
Oh my gosh.
Sometimes in churchyards, we're not planting it, but somebody flicked a joint into the churchyard, and then all of a sudden you just see a ganja plant growing.
You know, I'm getting shades of St. Patrick here with the 4-leaf clover. You're going to start evangelizing with the ganja,
Right?
just as the
Totally.
ganja.
Yeah, right. How do we get the Trinity to be a 5-leaf? That's going to take some work.
The resurrection, the fire of the Holy Spirit.
Oh man. Yeah. No.
I leave that to
Somebody
you. That's smarter people than me.
somebody was saying, since it's become legalized now in New York, somebody was saying, "Oh, what if we grew a field?" It's like, trust me, you don't want that. That stuff stinks. Even as like raw
Oh
plant
yeah.
form, it smells bad.
Yeah, and it's
But
everywhere. I
it is
mean,
interesting. So tourism is such a big part of that. So people you're
Yeah.
saying are coming for that tourism. The majority of their economy, right? And so
correct.
I think particularly where you are, you work out in the bush, but you're in the resort area. I would think that was the thing that probably surprised me the most the first time I went was how many European and American visitors are there that you get to minister to and you get to connect with this country rather than just coming and smoking your pot and having your good time. Well, let me introduce you to what's going on here.
Yeah, one of the things we were very deliberate with when we came down, well, I was told when we came down to Jamaica, was we were not going to go into the hotels. Is if tourists want to go to church or to talk to a priest, it's not that we're going to neglect you or anything like that, but that we want to be here for Jamaicans. And I think in particular with all inclusives and some hotels, you don't always see the full picture. You can go to the beautiful resort. You can see again, stunningly beautiful water and beaches. But then do you really see the shadow side of some of that? Where you can have $1 million resorts and businesses, and yet just a few miles away, people thinking of a particular family. 5 people living in a 1-bedroom, 10 by 12 board house that's falling apart, all within 3 miles of a
I,
multi-million-dollar resort.
I remember what shocked me, and I think I commented on you and I talked about it a little bit, was as we were driving, in the United States, we segregate the poor and the wealthy.
Mhm.
And we're very good at that here. There in Jamaica, you drive through a neighborhood, there's a nice big house and then a shack next to it. There's no segregation of like people just kind of live together. And I'm not, I can't really say if it's good or bad. I was just shocked by it. I was like, wow, like it's no matter where you go, you're going to see the wealthy, you're going to see the poor. And it was just something that I noticed as such a stark contrast to our cultural reality here in the States.
Yeah, one of the things
Yeah,
that
it
we
seemed to speak to the loyalty of the people, right? They stay in their neighborhoods.
Oh
Hmm.
yeah. Well, and part of that is you get family land, and so when if it's the King family land, and my older sister is able to build a nice, large cement block house, and I'm still living in a board house, we'll be side by side because it's family land, and then maybe. Her kids or my kids will build right there. One of the interesting story that just came up a few weeks ago, I had a funeral at one of the churches, and the family was fighting over where to bury the grandmother. And so as I pull up to the church, there are 6 constables with their guns out waiting for me to tell me that no funeral, no church service may happen today because there's been a stop order. So when I looked at it, I just said, you can't stop a church service. Nobody, that's God's authority. We're going to do this. We're going to bury her. Or we're going to have the right of Christian burial for her. But that the family was fighting over where she would be buried. And all funeral service. You just had they just had their automatic weapons out, or their some of their other weapons out in the churchyard, and very contentious. But it goes back to, like you said, where there's not, family land is family land, and it can get very ugly very fast. That was one of the
I didn't
most.
realize we were talking to Oscar Romero here.
Yeah, right.
You told a guy with a gun, no, I'm going to do what I want.
Yeah. But it was a very intense funeral service, and then afterwards, when and it's one of those where, as you guys know, like, we often kind of get pushed in the middle. Like, the police said no, the family said yes, and then you're kind of stuck in the middle saying, what do we do? And would have been illegal to have buried her in that location, and so, which then means I get to make the announcement at the, to everybody that this is the way it's going to have to go. So that made me not too popular on that day.
I do remember.
Can't say I've ever had that experience.
Well, people ask me, what did you learn about this experience when you're in seminary? I was like, what are you talking about? We don't go over. When the police try to stop.
When
a
guys with
church service.
Uzis show up.
Right.
Yeah, let me just pull out my handbook.
Right.
Yeah. No way, man. That's definitely crazier than anything I've ever had to deal with. But I do remember that. I do remember kind of driving around, and there were like random plots of like, oh, here's like 5 or 6 graves, and you were like, oh yeah, that's family owns that land, and that's where they're burying the family. I was like, oh, okay.
Yeah. And so everything's there. Every person in that family lineage has a claim to a piece of that land.
Yeah.
And you guys, we know how it is. Like, when everybody's kind of on top of everybody and there's not really that elbow space, things can get intense.
Yeah.
What would you say is, put you on the spot here, the strangest experience you've had? I mean, I think it's probably difficult to top having 6 constables with machine guns show up at a funeral, but you got to have different things every day.
If another funeral involves a funeral. I was, got a call from guys. So again, as he was just saying, Tito was just saying, there are cemeteries as we would understand them, but most people don't go there because it's so expensive. So they just bury the person according to the standards in their personal property. So we were getting ready for a funeral, and all of a sudden, a couple of the local guys called me and said, "Can you come up right now? We're digging the grave." And I said, "Well, yeah, I'll be there in a little bit. What's going on?" And they said, "Well, we found a human skull." And as they were digging the grave, they were going down, and if the grave was going like this, somebody was buried like this who nobody knew. It was a very old grave. It was a dirt grave, so it was before any vaults were built. And so we had to, as we got the skull and some of the other remains, we recommitted the body in a way that to try to protect it for the future as well. Here again, not too much. It's one of those. The call I got was, "Can you come up here?" I just presumed they wanted. A lot of folks will want. There's a great belief in sacramentals, and so just holy water and doing this and to start blessing it in their work. Certainly not going up to have a skull. To recommit somebody who accidentally.
Not something Fragamini told us about in our sacramentals class. What happens when you're going to bury someone's already in the grave?
Right.
Yeah. One of the most incredible things you guys do is you have that sort of like soup kitchen / also you give breakfast and bus stop for the kids. It's an incredible thing. I remember I went for 3 of the journeys, pick up the kids, take them to school, then come back down, start over, pick up more kids, take them to school. It was also a terrifying drive. Those Jamaicans.
Who's the best and worst driver?
Yeah.
Because some of y'all drive fast.
Yes.
No crashes.
I think Jim might be the scariest.
He's the scariest, hands down. He's the scariest. Yes. He's hands down.
But how long have you guys had that sort of the soup kitchen, I'll call it?
I want to say, so Jim started the soup kitchen. I want to say he September 11th of 2024 will be 16 years of Jim's
Wow.
time in Jamaica. And I want to say it was started about 15 years ago at that time. So probably about 2009 it started. And one of the things they found out here again, because we kind of, are so engaging the community, as they were doing the soup kitchen, one of the things that they found out is as the week went on, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, more and more school kids came to the soup kitchen for lunch. And it was, so what's going on? Why does this happen? Education in Jamaica is free, but there's no public transportation to get you there. And so parents have to pay taxi fare for their child to get to school. And the school where the bus run to get kids to school bus runs is probably, I'm gonna guess, 5 miles up the road, 10-15 minute drive. And so kids could walk that, I guess you could say, and or they would take bike taxis. But that if a parent has 2 or 3 children, which wouldn't be too out of the realm in Jamaica, it's a young population in Jamaica demographically. You're talking about probably close to, just in taxi fare, about $1,000 a day, which would be about $6.50 a day U.S. Right now, and that's just taxi fare. That's not lunch money. That's not school supplies. That's not uniform. Every kid has to wear a uniform. So that, if you figure that would be about 5,000 a week. Minimum wage just raised up to 15,000 or about 100 US a week. So you're talking about a third of your minimum wage
not much.
job
Yeah.
just to get your kid to school.
Yeah.
So again, trying to respond to a need, we can't take on schools or start schools or that become our entire onus. But so we were able to partner. Jim at the time was able to partner with a couple other organizations in order to get a school bus to help the kids get to school, and they pay a nominal fee. Everybody needs to have buy-in, but nowhere near what it would be for a taxi fare. And the students, as they come to get breakfast, can also, if they need school supplies, can get that, or uniform supplies as well. Trying to help remove some of those barriers. I know I don't always appreciate that can be there for education, with the idea being one of the best ways to address generational poverty is through education and trying to empower the youth to help them to move up and to stabilize their family and their lives.
So I want to take a step back here a little bit. We talked to Brother Albert Haas a couple weeks ago, and he said he grew up and he wanted to be a missionary to China, and then he was. Did
Yeah.
you grow up as a little boy in Ohio saying, man, my life's goal is to sweat to death down in Jamaica? Is this what you always envisioned for yourself?
Never. That was never my thought, never my plan. When I was growing up, Central Ohio, there had been a sense of a call at some point in different points of my life. Ignored most of that. I very much get Jonah. I understand that story very well. But eventually, at an unperturbed pace, God has a way of catching up to me. And when I I was a high school teacher in the Cincinnati area, taught children with disabilities. And it was during that time that came back to the Catholic Church, had gone away for a while in my youth, and really started to explore the idea of a vocation and looked at a couple of different communities. But what I would say in particular with my Franciscan discernment would be when I went to our Come and See weekend at St. Anthony's Shrine, it felt like home. Can't say more to it. Why join the Friars versus
Yeah.
I went to a Jesuit university, I knew some of the Dominicans and diocesan. No idea. I just know it felt like home. Went through formation and all of that. And while I was in my second year in Chicago, was working at University of Illinois Chicago, and we took a college group on a short-term mission trip to Jamaica, and really liked it. Really liked what we did. Really liked what we were doing. and the next year asked to go to Jamaica. And I just remember talking to my family about living a year in Jamaica, and they were just blown away. Like, where is this
Yeah.
coming from? It's kind of strange enough you're doing this Franciscan thing, and now what is this? Never part of
What's
my life,
happened to our little boy?
right?
Right.
Never in
Yeah.
my life would I have thought of that. Didn't join the Friars because of it. Didn't really know what I was looking for with the Friars, but it found me, I think. And really important for me was when I spent the year in Jamaica, the ending of that previous formation year didn't go well. A lot of my friends were leaving formation and kind of things were falling apart. And I was like, well, is it even worth buying a ticket? Why not just stay and just move on? Maybe it's time to go. And
Oh,
but
wow.
what's so
So you
important?
almost left the Friars.
Yeah, I was part of discernment, right? I mean, if you're
Sure,
not,
sure.
if that option's not there, you're not really discerning. If you can't say no, you can't say
Right.
yes. If you can't leave, then you can't stay. Um, and so, but I had great spiritual directors who were
Mm.
really accompanying me with all of this. And one of the things we in our province say is sometimes our brothers need to hold our vocations in their hands when we can't hold our own vocation, which I certainly know that feeling.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah.
but got to Jamaica and everything just kind of, it's where my vocation makes sense. And during that year, I needed some more healing. I needed some more maturing. I needed some more Jesus, just to put it, probably the easiest way to say it. But that was where I really, I think, came alive and said, okay, I can see a future here. It's not just whatever I was going through at the time, and all of those are, you know, come and go. Issues come and go. But to me, I think that's why it's so important. Why Jamaica, in particular, is so important to me is when it helps my life make sense. And all the craziness and the chaos and the dysfunction, I understand who God is trying to call me to be better in the midst of that.
Yeah, I
You
don't think
know,
your story is all that abnormal. You know,
yeah.
I think we think of, oh, I joined and I knew exactly what I wanted to do for my entire life, but it's not the case. And, you know,
Right.
Tito and I can both share similar stories where you enter with one idea and then a year later you have a different idea and a year later a different idea and it continues to change. You get ordained and then you have a different idea. I mean, Tito's
I
going back to get his degree now. What are you
I
doing,
was
Tito?
just about
Come
to say,
on.
like, I am finding myself in the situation where, for the first time in my life, I kind of see a plan unfolding
Mm.
into the future.
Mm,
I've always kind of just taken things as they were wherever I was, right? I grew up in the military, so wherever I found myself, I was like, I'm here now, and I do this. Um, and this is probably the first time where, similar to you, like as I've worked and grown and come to know new things, I would say some of the people that I worked with at Siena really helped me to kind of see, oh, like this whole thing about working through marketing and social media, this is work, but it also it's creativity, right? It's the kind of thing that I really enjoy doing. Now, that's not going to be the totality of my ministry, but it's a work that discovering, and I'm like, I would like to learn more about this, and I can see how I can use that gift to help the Franciscan order, at least our province. And so I'm kind of excited about that. But yeah, most people, there's a joke I heard some comedians saying, what do most people find in India themselves? You had to go to Jamaica to find yourself.
Yes, absolutely. And I think that's all part of discernment. Is if we're not certainly my experience, but I think you guys can appreciate is it's the biggest part to me for discernment when I'm in my healthiest and consolation and really able to discern is how do I say yes to what God is calling me to today? It's not a once and for all thing. It's
mm.
and sometimes, well, for instance, at that funeral when the constables were all there and I was very angry. It was not a happy place to be for me or a comfortable place. But and as you're again walking with families who are going through all of this, is how do I make sure that I'm able to pastor people, in this call, and am I willing to cooperate with Jesus in those moments? And discernment never ends. That's certainly something I'm finding out.
Yeah, I think discernment is a daily thing. It's waking up every morning and saying, Lord, what do you ask of me today? Obviously, we have the big picture. There are some commitments we make to solemn profession and ordination. You say, all right, I'm willing to commit my life to this. But that doesn't mean much, in your day to day. Like, all right, so I'm a priest. There are a billion things you could do. And there are lots of good and bad ways you could live out your priesthood. But it's moments like that. And I imagine the island mentality of, we'll do what we do.
Yeah.
We'll see what comes to us today. I imagine you have to scrap a lot of plans along the way, and it helps you, get into God's mindset a little bit, or at least predispose you to receive God of, not up to me to plan this one.
Right. One of the things we're working on, that's why my hair is so long and my beard is so long, is we're working.
That was going to be my next question. We were going to get there.
We're working on a school. So part of, again, where I'm at is very rural. It's called the Bush. But development is coming. And as chairman of a Catholic school, we do not want to have an overrun school with no space for students. And the education in Jamaica is very different than the United States. So although when I came to Jamaica, as pastor, I had 3 Catholic schools in the 2 parishes I was at. But some of the schools we have to pay for, and we've had to already close one of those because we just don't have the money to operate it. But at other schools, the government will pay for, because the government doesn't have money to build, and the religious orders, which own about 50% of all the schools, don't really have money to pay teachers. So it's a bit of a marriage of convenience, and to really expand the educational footprint in Jamaica. But here again, a good learning process. We have a great team of people who are committed to this project and to helping with it. But we thought we would have been broken ground just about a year ago now. And it just, I just, when people say, when's this going to happen? I just say, in God's good time. I have, at this point, God's good time, whenever it is. But not this past year, but the year before in January, not this past January, but the January before. I just said, Lord, I surrender it to you. If you want this to happen, it'll happen. If you don't, kill it. But I'm not going to...
That's tough to do.
It is. That's surrendering. But it's critical, I think, for me, because it's important for me to do that, not to allow that appropriation and pride to creep in. But I said, I'll cut my hair when we break ground, and I'll shave my beard when butts are actually in seats. So... I may be John the Baptist. I mean,
Locust and honey in your
That's
future,
right.
man.
I gotta think it's warm, right?
Oh, it's awful.
Does it add a little bit to the
Absolutely.
discomfort? Yeah.
Incredibly. And it is, it's awful. Now, one of the things I have a sister, when I told one of my sisters I was joining the Franciscans, she just said, oh, that's so unfair. And I was like, well, what's unfair about it? And she goes, you got the thick curly hair and the blue eyes, and you're wasting it now. But whenever I just feel the sweat dripping down, it's like, yeah, I'm glad we get rid of all of this right now.
Well, I'll tell you, so for whatever reason, I'm going to say I intentionally did it, but I didn't. I just forgot to turn on the AC. I'm in Georgia right now, and there's no air conditioning in the building, so I'm in solidarity with you normally. You're in Indiana right now, but
Right.
I'm sweating quite a bit. This is just your normal existence.
It is. We are in the season where I measure my days by how many shirts I have to change into. And like on a Sunday, being pastor of multiple churches, I go through about 5 shirts on a Sunday, because after each church service, you got to change, because there's no way you can wear that in between. And then I always think of one of our brother Norbert, who was in my novitiate director, but also at the shrine after I was ordained. Whenever I would, even in the United States, I just sweat a lot. And he would just say, yep, we're not going to hang this one up just yet. We're going to let it air dry before it goes back into the cabinet with any alb or chasuble, because you don't want that stuff going in there too soon.
Oh yeah, and Norbert will just say it.
Oh yeah, oh yeah.
God bless him.
Yep.
Yeah.
Now there's a little trick that some people think, which is you often wear a white habit. Now I seem to understand that does nothing in terms of the heat, but you wear it anyway.
I don't find any difference.
Okay.
I know people say that. I think it's just as hot. The downside to white is that particularly when you sweat a lot, and if you're doing any work, if outside, all that dirt's just going to stick to your habit, and it gets really dirty really
And it's
fast.
see through.
And it's see through. There's nothing. It makes no sense to me. I know some people swear by it and say how nice it is and how different and how much it helps. And I'm sure somehow it helps them. I don't
Good
get
for them.
it.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
I'm sure you think it helps you. Like,
So you got some big projects going on. You're
Yeah.
building a school. You're hopefully going to shave sometime.
hopefully, yes.
But obviously, so we've mentioned you're not in Jamaica right now. So what do you do in the U.S.? You just getting on a little vacation? Got to get out?
So 3 years ago, my provincial at the time asked me to go back to school and something that would be beneficial to the order. I am not an academic. I'm not able to do that. And so, as we were discussing it, he thought it would be good to get something that maybe could help administratively. That as the provinces continue to change and evolve, that it could be good to have some training of way administration. So I'm currently at the University of Notre Dame in South Bend and working on an executive master's of nonprofit administration, which is like an MBA, but for folks in the nonprofit world. And in the summer, we have to be on campus for 10 weeks and then take a course online, in the fall and spring semester. So who knows what this will be? Could be helpful. We got some transitions coming down into Jamaica, and so it'll be helpful, I think, looking at navigating some of those. But it's been a great experience, in particular, meeting folks from a pretty broad swath of the nonprofit world in the ways in which they are looking at helping, and ways that from folks from massive corporations, Volunteers of America, Make-A-Wish Foundation, to Southern Baptist pastors who are just building their own personal churches, their churches. So it's been a great experience. And then we'll be back down in Jamaica in August again, and resume my duties. Father Maxwell is down there currently filling in for me, and so he will. It looks like, I'm not too sure when you guys will air this, but he'll be able to his first time there and go through a hurricane that's headed our way, Hurricane Beryl. So it looks like it won't be a direct hit to us, but you just want to give the brothers gifts, and so while I'm up here in the AC and all of this, he can be down there with that.
Well, since Maxwell declined to be on our show when we asked him, we can say anything we want about him. And he won't be here to defend himself. So,
Absolutely.
what stories do we have about Maxwell?
He's a jerk.
But that's great. And that, I will say, to undercut that, he's a wonderful brother. And
Yes.
I think evidence of that, he's going to go cover for you for a few weeks in Jamaica. It's
Yeah.
what the brothers do.
The summer in Jamaica.
Right. And knew full well what he was getting into. And, absolutely.
And knowing him, you will never forget it.
Yeah.
He'll bring it up.
Do you remember that summer that I covered for you, Jamaica?
Yeah.
He'll never see this.
No.
No. So you're going to get an MBA of sorts. So can we count on you to be the next provincial? Cast our votes there? Administration?
I think I'm a good bush pastor. I think I do my best out in the wilderness, out there. But it is. I mean, it does go to show. And I think one of the things I've certainly have taken away from this, you can have very well-meaning people who can do a lot of damage into great institutions. And it'll be something for us to navigate and to go through. We were very blessed with Francis as our founder, but him trying to get a rule
Oh yeah,
Organizing anything, St. Francis organizing anything was
took
a challenge.
maybe 13 years.
Yeah,
Yeah,
Right.
yeah,
maybe 16. Yeah.
yeah.
And it's
Share a
this
little
big.
wisdom then. So you've been 3 years in this program. Um, Obviously, there's tons and tons of information. Is there something you can think of right away? You're like, oh man, I'd never thought of that. That's really helpful. It's a great skill. Something I use now.
I think one of the things that we're working on is strategic planning. Very businessy thing, and I think can get very corporate speak very fast. But I also think it's leveraging some of the best of the business practices into what we do, and you know, I think that it's something that all of us should be looking at is what is it that we're really trying to accomplish, but going back to discernment, but also how do we do it and how do we evaluate it, how do we measure it, and what are we hope to be in 3, 5, 7, 9, 12 years. The one of the issues I think we ran into in the legacy province I'm from is diminishment was all around us, and we just kind of went by a road of attrition, and just when somebody stopped, then we just had to close instead of saying, and I think many dioceses are going through this now, but instead of just saying close piece by piece, is we still have work of the kingdom to do. Just because maybe we're getting smaller, maybe we're getting older, maybe there aren't the same number of vocations there were decades ago, doesn't mean that the Holy Spirit isn't still with us and helping us, and that we don't have work to do. And if we're going to follow Jesus, while He's the shepherd, 100%, it's also good for us to use the gifts we have and the ability we have to look at how can we do this in an effective manner today. So I would say,
Which is something I think we've been talking about this whole time. Right.
Yeah.
So you're in Jamaica. Follow the
Yeah.
Spirit, whatever God leads me today. Yeah, that doesn't
Right.
mean we don't have to plan.
Right,
Right.
right. And I think that's one of those where I hear, hopefully you guys have never done this, that I know of, I've never done this, but I've heard other priests say, well, I didn't prepare a homily day, so I'm just going to preach what the Spirit tells me. And I just think, oh, that's not
No.
fair to blame God for that. You should have done
Yeah.
some work.
Yeah.
Don't hide behind the Spirit right now.
No.
Yeah. I've heard that before, and I will say the Holy Spirit gets blamed for a lot of bad decisions.
Yes,
Uh-huh.
absolutely. Absolutely.
We actually had a teacher in seminary, one of the first couple days. He said, gentlemen, what happens if you don't prepare or a deacon gets up and reads the wrong homily or the wrong gospel? What do you do in those situations? He say, you sit down and you say nothing. He says, the people are smarter and deserve better than for you to ramble on for 15 minutes with nothing to say.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Why should they suffer?
I forget who it was, but it was someone like Augustine or someone like this. And they said, I wish I had more time to write you a shorter letter.
Yeah.
I think preparation, if nothing else, helps us be short, be brief, get to the point.
Yeah.
That's such a good line.
Yes, absolutely. And I know I feel it. I mean, I know when you can just feel like as you're preparing with everything else and being pastor of churches and all the other things we're involved with, clinics, bringing healthcare to rural Jamaica, more access to healthcare to our places, schoolwork, just the craziness of just day-to-day life. And you're like, oh man, I wish I had more time. So my advice has always been less is more. My approach has always been less is more. Is that even if there's other great ideas, on a Sunday sermon, it's a homily at least, in 3 years I'll get another chance. So you don't need to cover everything this time.
I'm a big proponent of 7 minutes is a good amount of time.
Yeah. Now in Jamaica, that's not the case. If you preach for 7
No.
minutes, if I were to preach for 7 minutes, my Jamaican mothers in the churches would come up and say, Father, do you not feel good? Because you didn't preach very long, which is,
Yeah. Well, they
less-
walked an hour to get there. They want a
Yeah.
big show.
yeah, exactly. And they're less worried about my health than they are the big show.
Yep.
No,
That's not a real
culturally,
question. That's a passive aggressive. Oh,
Right.
you must
yeah,
be sick.
yeah.
That's why you weren't good,
You
right? Because you were
you
sick.
you
Okay.
you better be sick.
Right.
No, I definitely noticed that cultural difference. I was invited to preach at a Protestant church near Siena. Just met some really great people from that church, and because I was doing an opening prayer for a different ceremony, and they brought their minister over, and we met and we talked, and he's like, "Do you want to preach at our church?" I was like, "Sure." And then as time was coming up, I messaged him. I was like, "Hey, how long do you usually
Yeah.
preach?" He goes, "About 15, 20 minutes." It's like, "Okay."
Oh, I thought you were going to say 45. You got off easy.
No, I got it pretty easy, but I was like, I can do that. I can do 15, 20 minutes.
Yeah.
Sure,
So,
sure.
yeah.
It's a big difference. We do one
Well,
of the things we've tried to do with evangel. Again, Jamaica is a very Protestant country, so we use
Hmm.
some of what folks are used to, but make it
Right.
very Catholic.
Yeah.
So, like, we'll do
mhm.
crusades or revivals, tent revivals, and in the church as well. And yeah, with that, it is hard work to preach
Hmm.
45 minutes or an hour. I mean,
Hmm.
like the couple times I've done that, had to do that, it's a lot of work. Um, and it takes a lot of effort and stamina. Like I definitely, it, it's a lot of work.
That's a lecture.
Yeah.
That's what that
Well,
is.
Oh
That's a
yeah,
lecture.
yeah.
sure.
And to hold
Well,
people's
and to make it
attention.
not a lecture, you got to have the energy. You got to have the
Right.
spirit, which adds just more energy. I mean, a
Oof.
lecture, anyone can read a lecture, but
Yeah,
man, to
True.
preach, that's
yeah,
something else.
yeah.
Well, brother, you are doing the work. You are making us proud down there. We pray for your stamina. Is there something that we can pray for? Something we can know about that you're concerned about? You're hoping for? Obviously, the school. Anything else we can pray for?
I just think for me, it's important that as we move into this new province, that we keep foreign missions. I think that's particularly us as Franciscans. That's deep within our DNA. We're the first rule of the Catholic Church to have foreign missions written explicitly into it. And I think particularly with some of the talk of like Pope Francis, if we really want to find who we are as church, we have to go to the edge. We have to go to the margins. I think if we really want to find out who we are as province of Our Lady of Guadalupe, we need to go to the margins. I think Jamaica is a great place. I know in my own life, it's critical, plays a very important role in my own vocation. But I would just say that we continue to have the courage. I think the gift of fortitude is one of the more underappreciated gifts of the Holy Spirit in this time and day. But that we, as province of Our Lady of Guadalupe, have the fortitude to continue to follow where Jesus leads.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Amen. Thank you so much, brother. I hope
Thank you,
your
guys.
rest of your schooling goes well. Enjoy the air conditioning.
Absolutely, it's glorious.
Slightly different experience.
It is.
Yep.
It's one of those. Whenever I'm in the air conditioning, just because I'm fraternal, I always send pictures back to the brothers in Jamaica so they can see. Only out of fraternity.
As the
That's the
brothers
only
do.
reason
That's
why I
it.
do it.
100%.
Yes.
Celebrate with me,
Well, thank
brothers.
you so much for joining us. Brother, I hope to see you in a few months. We're
Yeah,
planning to
that'd be
come down in
great.
November with another group.
We're excited.
Awesome.
Going to be great. Thank
Awesome.
you.
Thanks, guys. We'll see ya.
Take care.
So, Tito, you have a desire to be a foreign missionary someday.
I
What is
do.
your experience of Jamaica, and what do you get from Colin's experience?
I would go in a heartbeat. So, my experience
Don't
on
say
it,
that too loud. He's still on the call.
my experience was first of all, when he talked about like the sacramentality of the people, like their sense of there's an earthiness, right? An appreciation of like the tangibles of the faith. Um, and I see that. I saw it when I was there, and it's something that I really resonate with. The whole reason that we use oils and holy water and bread and wine is because God recognizes that we are people with senses and that we have to be engaged totally. And I think we take so many things for granted here that in Jamaica they're like, oh no, this is a
Mm,
beautiful expression of who we are. I really loved that, and just some fantastic people. We didn't really talk about it, but there is an honesty to Jamaicans that um, it relieves the pressure, right? I met a fantastic woman there named Pearl, Miss Pearl,
Uh-huh.
And
Yeah.
she's cross-eyed. And when I met her, she goes, um, she says, "My name is Miss Pearl. People call me cross-eyed Pearl. You can call me Miss Pearl." And I was like, okay.
Get that right out there.
I was like, so we just mentioned that. All right, she's cross-eyed, so it's out there. I didn't have to like. It wasn't this unspoken
Mhm.
thing now. And I felt a sense of relief with the honesty because it wasn't honesty with I don't know, maliciousness. It was just honesty,
Mhm.
and that
Frankness.
yeah, frankness. That was really really refreshing. I love it there.
Y- Yeah, I think there's a temptation sometimes to romanticize the poor, and so I don't want to do that
Right.
because poor people can still be jerks, and they can still be
Yeah.
selfish, and they can still live degenerate lives. But
Yeah.
there is something about the simplicity and the not being so filled up and distracted by the worldliness that we experience so often that does get to the heart of things sometimes. And you see the tremendous faith of someone willing to walk 3 miles to get to church, and you see how they're so dependent on God that it really does speak to you sometimes. You go
Yeah.
back different than when you were there.
Yeah. I mean, there were issues there. I saw it, I experienced it, but yeah, nothing about what I saw and experienced negatively overrode the positive that I felt there, and a desire to
Yeah.
be in that kind of environment, if not specifically there.
Yeah. For me, I don't have a tremendous call to be a foreign missionary. There's something I think like the wanderlust of it, of traveling and going other places, meeting new people. I always love that.
Yeah.
But I do have a strong missionary spirit. And so, what can you take from these things to go back to your own city, go back to your own environment and say, man, we're missing something here. There's
Yeah.
something that I found there that needs to be brought here, whether it's an actual activity, whether it's a spirit. You can bring what you've found in maybe those beautiful, simple things.
I think so.
And
I think so.
sometimes, it takes minor characters to teach us that. So
That's right.
I'm going to try something new here as we sign off that remember that you may be a minor character, but you can still make a major difference. Thanks for listening. We'll catch you next week.